smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full-service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com. It's time to go around the state and find out what's happening on the college football gridiron. With some of the best insiders in the state of Florida covering the Canes, Seminoles, and Gators. It's the Sports Talk 305 State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable. With Manny Navarro from The Athletic, Ira Schofel from WarChant.com, and Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Huddle up, Miami, Florida, and Florida State fans. Here's your host, Orlando Alzugari.
Hey, yes, sir. Let's talk a little college football. Gentlemen, good evening. How are you doing?
We're great, man.
Wonderful.
Good. Kevin, you look like when I used to go to the Sportatorium. And, there was like this big cloud of smoke that was inside the Sportatorium. And so I don't know what the hell is going on with your lens, but boy, you got some shade going on there. Either that or Snoop Dogg is hanging out, or Wiz Khalifa. Somebody's in that room.
I think I have to work on the lighting a little bit. That's the thing. Like I'm trying to, I was trying to find a good angle here, but I'll work on that for next week.
Well, of course, that is Kevin Brockway, who is way too good looking for us. That's why he's doing this. That's what it is. You know what I'm saying? Everybody else tries to enhance. He's trying to bring it down because he's the only good looking one in the group. And as you can see, we're going to be talking some Seminoles, some Gators, and some Hurricanes throughout this hour. We'll be doing it every single week. And then, of course, Mike McCoy will take over at 8 o'clock with the Miami Hurricanes Watch. And that's an entire hour of hardcore Canes talk. And of course, you can see right there, you can reach out to all the guys on Twitter. Ira Schofel. It's either at Ira Schofel or probably once more War Chant, right? It's more about War Chant, right? Isn't it, Ira? That's what it's all about.
It's either way, man. I'll respond to the at Ira Schofel, but the at War Chant is our main account. But I'll respond personally to mine.
It's a beautiful thing. All right. First of all, let's get into it. Let's start with the Gators. Let's start with Kevin. As Florida, kind of defeated South Florida there. That was, that was kind of crazy. And first of all, I got to start with the obvious. So I'm looking at Anthony Richardson, right? And we're looking at what he. And by the way, I really was rooting for this kid also because in the offseason, he did that. What is it that his name was? Kind of
AR-15.
AR-15, and yeah.
I love that. I love the awareness of all of that. That was so cool that he did that. But then he wows us with that one game. And then after that, it's been kind of, disaster. And I'm looking at it, and it's 53% completion percentage, but he has 0 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions. And he had the 3 rushing TDs against Utah. Outside of that, he really hasn't rushed, really hasn't done much. So who is the real Anthony Richardson? Tell us about this kid, because I don't know what the hell to expect from one week to another.
Well, I think the book is out on him, Big O, and I think that's the issue. Is what happened was he had that great week 1 against Utah, and teams have figured out to take away the run game from him and make him a thrower and make him throw the ball downfield. And Kentucky exposed that. Certainly, they had a spy on him. USF followed a very similar game plan. And right now, Anthony's issues are with his accuracy as a thrower. But he's a great athlete. He's running read option. I think the threat of him running the football has opened up other things in the run game. For example, Montrell Johnson with a 62-yard touchdown run. He probably wouldn't have that run without the threat of Anthony Richardson on the read option. But Richardson hasn't really made much plays with his legs lately because defenses are taking that away, and he's going to have to develop into a more accurate passer going forward, or else he's going to face these similar game plans.
And as a follow-up to that, and before you go over there, Ira, and take over on this one, that's the trap in college and in the NFL with the great athlete. And it happened to all of us at the park when we were playing football. There's 8 of us or 10 of us. We want to get a 4-on-4 or 5-on-5, right? There's only one dude that really can pass the ball. And then there's the other guy that's like an athlete that, yeah, he can throw it for miles and he'll wow you and all that. And that's the danger of the athlete. The athlete can wow you for a moment, for a game, maybe for a couple weeks, but it's hard for the athlete to then become a quarterback week in and week out. And for me, Kevin, that's the trap that Florida is in right now. Do we have an athlete that understands how to corral his talents to actually become a quarterback for us?
Yeah, and I think that's going to, he still has only had 4 career starts. I mean, he has been here for 3 years, but I think that's, the issue. Can he develop into a more accurate passer? And truth be told, too, Big O, I think the receiving position here at Florida also is not dynamic. I'm sure, Manny might be able to say the same thing about Miami, too.
Yeah,
you don't have those playmakers that you've had in the past. I mean, Xavier Henderson, I know he's a kid from Columbus in Miami, for example. His hands are a little suspect, and they're just, Justin Shorter was a 5-star coming from Penn State, but he's been a little bit of a disappointment. So I think that's been the issue too, is with the whole passing game is, finding guys to get open and to just reassess the passing game. I mean, I know for this week for Tennessee, they're going to try to all go over film together and try to solve the problem, coaches and players, receivers, offensive analysts and Billy Napier to try to figure it out. Because right now they're last in the SEC in passing offense at 141 yards a game. And that's not going to cut it long-term in this league.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Kevin, just how much of that is going to kind of affect how fans perceive Coach Napier, because, Florida fans are used to wide open offense, just like Florida State fans. Even if you win, Florida State doesn't need to win with defense. They need to win with they need to put points on the scoreboard, because that's what FSU fans were used to back in the 90s and even going back to the 80s. How much of that is winning ugly going to be enough for Coach Napier, or do they need to have some offense just to kind of keep the fans feeling good about the program?
Yeah, that's interesting, Ira, because I wrote about that week 1, and it was kind of raised by an anonymous coach in Athlon about, Billy Napier. He's a ball control guy. He's a guy that's, going to play conservative and bleed the clock when he has a lead. He's going to manage it. And the goal is to try to get big plays off play action, basically and with the read option, eventually, hit those big shots downfield. But they've established a run game, I think, pretty well. They've got a really good offensive lineman in Osiris Torrance, who transferred from Louisiana, who's really knocking people, off the line and so forth, and they're opening holes in the run game. But yeah, fans want to see that throwing the football, and they are getting. You're already getting some questions about the play calling up here, so it's going to be interesting to see if Napier can win and build something in the next 2 or 3 years. Maybe that will be forgiven. But my experience in coaches that have played conservative up here, Ron Zook, Will Muschamp, they haven't lasted. So it's going to be interesting to see the next 2 or 3 years if Billy Napier can make it work.
Conservative. Interesting topic. And receivers that, not a lot of them. Yeah, Florida and Miami. There's a lot of stuff going on there. All right, let's by the way, you can follow Kevin, as you can see it right there. For those of you listening on the podcast, you're not going to be able to, but Kevin Brockway G1, and of course catch his work there at the Gainesville Sun covering the Gators. All right, we move on to the Seminoles now, and Ira Schofel. All right, Ira, a win against Louisville. For me, here's my big problem right now. I was going to ask you about Mike Norvell. Is he the guy, this, that? But the real problem I had was with those white uniforms. That I got to get down to the down and dirty stuff here. Okay, I don't want the Green Bay Packers to change their uniforms. I don't need to see anything. Leave the yellow, leave the green, leave the G. I'm good with that. Leave the George Halas Chicago C there. just don't change it. That helmet is impeccable, dude. It's a great logo. Happened to me.
I got you echoing a little bit.
The icy whites.
The icy whites.
They're trying to get like some gum or some kind of icy hot or something as a sponsor. Are they hard up for money, or what's the deal there? What's going on?
You know how it is, man. We're a bunch of old dudes who are yelling, "Get off my lawn!" The players love it. The recruits love it. Not all the fans love it. A lot of the fans want to see the traditional garnet and gold uniforms, the garnet tops, gold pants, the iconic helmet. What was different about this one, they've worn all white before, but this is the first time they've worn the white helmets like that. And it would have been the first and last time if Malik Cunningham had engineered one last touchdown drive and they lost that game. Several people around the program said, well, if we lose this game, you'll never see these again. But they won, so maybe they'll live to see another day, whether or not you like it.
On a serious note with Norville, is what tells you he's the guy? Because I not that he's convinced me yet, but hell, he's doing a decent job at least right now. They're undefeated. And what's this? The first time since 7 years or something that they started undefeated or something crazy?
Yeah, 7 years since they've been 3-0, and that's going back the last 2 years of Jimbo. So this isn't just what's happened after him. They weren't playing well in his last few years as well. I think the biggest things that Mike Norvell's brought is he has instilled some toughness in his team, and Florida State has lacked that for several years, partly because at the end of Jimbo Fisher's tenure, things were slipping. He had his eyes on the LSU job. He had his eyes on the Texas A&M job, and a lot of things were slipping through the cracks in terms of the weight room and just accountability. Then you had the Willie Taggart tenure, which was kind of a disaster in 2 years. Then Norvell comes in. You have the COVID year. So Florida State has lacked that toughness physically and mentally for a long time, and I think that's one big thing that he has brought. I think another thing he's brought is they've established an identity. They've improved Jordan Travis greatly. When you talk about Anthony Richardson, a lot of the things that Kevin's talking about, I was reflecting on conversations we've had about Jordan Travis last year or the year before, where teams said, you know what, we're not going to let you run. You've got to throw the football. And Jordan now has spent a lot of time improving his ability as a passer. Plus, they went out and got some better weapons in the transfer portal at wide receiver and the offensive line. So now Jordan can throw the ball, and that now you have a real offense. And, it took some growing pains to get there. But those are some of the things he brought. The big question for Mike Norvell to answer, I think, is just recruiting. Is he going to be able to recruit at the level Miami, the way things are going with Mario? Is he going to be able to recruit with, the Clemsons? And Florida State has not been able to get the elite players for several years. And so that's going to be the next big question he has to answer.
Well, they might have a chance now because they did eliminate the backpack, right? Because that wasn't very tough. See, Mike knew that you got to eliminate the backpack.
You can't have the Dora backpack on the sideline.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Hey, Ira, I was going to ask you just obviously, it was a big win last week at Louisville, but the injuries, to their quarterback, Jared Verse, their best pass rusher, a lot of guys got dinged up in that game, and I haven't, I've been in my own world covering Miami and their issues. Curious kind of what the latest is on that front and the way that might shape things going forward, because I thought really Jordan Travis was the key to all this for FSU. He's played phenomenally in my eyes to this point. How long might he be out or affected by what happened?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question, and there's not anything definitive yet. Mike Norvell I've covered a lot of different coaches at a lot of different schools, and nobody is as cautious and as secretive, I guess you'd say, about injuries as Mike Norvell. I mean, he does not want to talk about injuries. So what I would say is I think they're going to get some of these guys back over the next couple of weeks. It doesn't sound like of the injuries that you're talking about that happened in that game, I don't think, and there were a few more than the ones you mentioned, I don't think any of them are necessarily long-term injuries, but some of those guys are probably going to miss this week against Boston College. Some might miss the next week against Wake Forest, but I think most of them are going to be back within a few weeks, which is good news because, they looked really devastating. Now the question is, if Jordan doesn't play against Boston College, and he has not been ruled out yet, they're hoping he will be able to play in Wake Forest. Can you still win those games? Are you good enough as a program now to still win those games without Jordan Travis going with a backup quarterback and Tate Rodemaker? Or do you have to have him even to win those games? We know they need Jordan Travis to win at NC State a week or so later. We know they need him to have a chance against Clemson or winning down at Miami. But can you win these next two games with Tate Rodemaker and without maybe some of those other guys? Those other guys you mentioned. That's a big question, and we'll see. I think they'll get some of these guys back in the next week or two, but some others may not be for another week or two down the road.
And as Ira mentioned, FSU is taking on Boston College and Florida taking on Tennessee this week. It'll be Middle Tennessee and Miami Saturday at 3:30. We move on to Manny Navarro now as Miami ends up losing to number 24 Texas at the time, 17-9. And Manny, I know he's not going to tell you or anybody else, but is there a part of Mario that's kind of cringing about this first month of his career? Because this is something they got to avoid, right? You've got Middle Tennessee State now. You've had 3 cupcakes in 4 weeks. This is not good for strength of schedule. This is not good to prepare your team for ACC play. I understand 1, maybe 2. Okay, but in today's world with the power rankings and the schedule and all that stuff, is that something they're talking about here now when you look at what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's too worried about this cupcake schedule in the beginning. I think it's more about getting these guys to play the way he wants them to play, having the mentality and the attitude. Really, when you look at what's affected Miami over the last 2 decades, besides the fact that they haven't recruited nearly at the same level that they used to this point, is the fact that a lot of these guys have been mental midgets, right? I mean, they would get beaten one game and then it affects them for the next 3 weeks, and they just never really get out of that funk. I think the one thing Mario has brought to that locker room, when you look at his players and you hear them talk, is this mentality of, hey, you know what, next play, move on. We lost to Texas A&M. It wasn't a good showing. Our offense only put up 9 points. But I don't think that the same problems that was affecting Miami's locker room before under Manny Diaz and some of the previous coaches that have been here, where you didn't have enough of that leadership, enough of that guidance at the top. I don't think that's necessarily the case here with Mario anymore. Now, are the guys frustrated, or are some of these receivers upset, that people are pointing the finger at them for what happened at Texas A&M? I'm sure they are. But they've got to step up and they've got to perform and they've got to raise their level of play here if Miami's going to have the kind of season that they hope to have. I said this to you on my weekly appearance on your show today. I still think this team can win this division, the Coastal Division this year, playing the style that Mario wants them to play, which is conservative, run the ball, play defense. I think Kevin Steele's done a phenomenal job with the defense, getting them to tackle better, getting them to play better assignment football. And I don't see enough scary offenses in the ACC, maybe besides North Carolina on their side of the bracket, that's going to put them in a game where they have to win a shootout. I just think Miami's in a good position to play the style Mario wants and still achieve what it wants to achieve this season.
All right, good stuff there. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Manny, Tyler Van Dyke, I mean, how would you assess where he is at this point? I know a lot of expectations going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's not happy. This isn't what he signed up for when he came back and decided, I'm going to try to make a push here for the Heisman and be a first-round pick. This isn't the numbers that he was hoping to put up, certainly through these first 3 games. But I will say, the one good thing about Tyler, as far as his attitude is concerned, he's not one of these guys who's going to be negative and bring teammates down around him. He's more of an encourager behind the scenes. And, I think he's sort of stepped up his leadership in the locker room behind some of the encouragement from Mario. Was telling him, hey, you got to get all these guys on speed dial. You got to call them up, tell them to come out and play catch with you, not just Xavier Restrepo, not just a few of the guys you get along with. And so I think he's taken more ownership of that. Obviously now, all of that he did in the offseason with trying to get to know the rest of his receivers and build those relationships, it's going to tell us how Miami does here down the stretch and whether or not they can turn things around. But yeah, there's no question he's disappointed in the way this season has started for him individually. I know he has high hopes, but I will say this, if Miami, has the kind of season that they want, I do think there's a lot of NFL teams that are still very interested in him because his arm strength is there. I think his leadership, his personality, all the things, all those intangibles that they look at are still there for him.
All right, good stuff. And this week, by the way, Florida taking on Tennessee. Tennessee is favored by 10. The over and under is 62. Florida's plus 295 in the money line. Tennessee minus 360 in the money line. Middle Tennessee visiting Miami. Miami is favored by 26.5 points. The over and under is 52.5. Middle Tennessee is plus 1,600 on the money line. What a bargain! And Miami,
we can get rich.
Yes, exactly. And Miami's minus 4,500. Man, wow. All right, and FSU and BC. FSU is favored by 16.5 points. BC coming off that big win against Maine or something. What was it?
They did.
Yeah, right. Yeah, boy, them Bears. 48.5 points, plus 610 on the money line, and FSU is minus 750 on the money line. Remember, you can reach out to us here on the program on the Welton Rayom text line at 855-912-1056. So if I can squeeze in those questions, I can ask the guys, send it in. You can do it on our YouTube chat board also. And let's give Adam the honor of having the first one, and it's a Gator question. And just for you, Kevin, he says, unfortunately, I don't think depth is there for UF at nearly every position. It may take a couple more recruiting classes to build it up. Damn, it sounds like Miami, Florida, and Florida State. It's like the same problem all over.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And where the depth shows up most is on the front seven and at the receiver position. And that's why Billy Napier, if you look at his 2023 class, a lot of defensive linemen, a lot of wide receivers. But this week, the defense, USF rolled up 402 yards of total offense, mainly because Ventrell Miller, a guy that you guys know, a Miami area kid who's in his 6th year here, was out. And he means a lot to that defense. I think he's going to be out for a little while, maybe not the whole season. But without him, he's kind of their communicator, their emotional leader, their best tackler at linebacker. And they have problems in that area that they're going to have to, kind of solve and navigate through these next couple of weeks.
And folks, if you are looking just in case to make a little sports investment, betus.com. They are back for their 28th year of NFL action. They offer the industry's biggest sign-up bonuses at up to 200%. BetUS has all your favorite leagues, including the NFL, MLB, NBA, and NCAA, baby. They offer everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, horse, esports, and all kinds of crazy bets and props. BetUS also has hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest European slots with live dealers, and they're waiting for you at the tables. BetUS is a sportsbook with integrity and longevity, and you know that you're going to get paid. Go to betus.com. That's BetUS. Join now. Get 200% in bonuses with promo code Big O. Nobody in the industry gets you better discounts than BetUS. Again, join now and mention Big O, and you can get up to 200% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody beats that. Head to betus.com and join today. BetUS, where the games begin. Let's take a break. You're listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
You're listening to the home for hardcore college football coverage. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable with Manny Navarro, Ira Schofel, and Kevin Brockway on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
Oh, I think I know what this is. Houston, we have a package. Hello?
No matter where you are, the Sloman Shield home security system guards your home. With next-gen perimeter protection, 24/7 monitoring, and interior motion sensing. And right now, get a free Sloman Shield security system and doorbell camera, all professionally installed, for free.
Shield your world, the Sloman Shield.
Hey guys, this is Hayden Hurst, NFL tight end. I'm partnering today with Red Recover. We're going to run you guys through some drills. I started using Red Recover last year, my 4th year in the NFL. It just helps me on Mondays after games, get my recovery process started, get back into the fold of the week, and get ready for the following Sunday. And if you want to recover like me, use Red Recover.
Welcome back to the best coverage of college football around the state on any platform. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sportstalk305 Network.
All right, welcome back. Orlando Alzagari with you. Ira Schofel, Manny Navarro, Kevin Brockway, as we cover the Gators, the Seminoles, and the Canes every week. You can catch us here right on the platform from 7-8. You can catch us live, but I know how it is. 98% of the world is on demand. That's the way the world goes, and it's all good. But if you're here live with us, we appreciate it. From 7 to 9 every Tuesday. The Miami Hurricanes watch will start at 8 o'clock with Mike McCoy, so we'll pass the baton off to him. All right, fellas, let's go around. Let's talk a couple things going on in college football. First of all, Herm Edwards gets fired from Arizona State. Did he deserve it is the question. They haven't had a losing season since 2016. And then the other thing I'd like to ask you guys here as you guys go back and forth, does Arizona State know who they are? Because you're not Alabama, and you're not going to sit there and tell me that you're going to end up becoming a force in college football. Was Herm that bad? And I know they're under investigation. I don't know how much is Herm's fault or not or what, but what do you guys think about everything that's gone on with Herm Edwards and Arizona State?
You want to go first, Manny, or you want me to?
No, you can start, Ira.
I was just going to say, I'm a little bit familiar with that situation just because Florida State played them in the bowl game about 4 years ago. And at that point in time, it looked like a great hire because Herm had gone and he brought in all these NFL guys. And that was the whole story, was that he was NFLizing their program. And it was looked like it was going to be a big win for recruiting because kids wanted to come play there to play for former NFL stars or NFL coaches, and they felt like that would prepare them for the NFL. That's what they were selling. And, they look good at that point in time. And they've had, as you said, they've had some success on the field. The off-field thing last year, the NCAA stuff was not just a black eye. I think it undermined a lot of what was going on inside the program. I think they had infighting in their staff because if you remember, that got turned in by somebody on their staff.
Right.
And so I think there was some issues going on inside their staff. Then you had a bunch of players leave at the end of last season. Look, the big star receiver for Florida State right now, Johnny Wilson, the 6'7" kid who had 7 catches for 149 yards the other night, is an Arizona State kid. He should still be there. And Jaden Daniels, who they played for LSU a couple weeks ago, he should still be there. And so you had kids bailing and getting in the portal. And then that loss last week was it Eastern Michigan that they just got blown out.
Didn't they pay them? Didn't they pay them to go there?
Yeah. And just got trounced. And it looked like his kids have quit. So I think that's where you're at. Is you've had this internal stuff, the investigation, kids basically quitting, kids bailing on the program. So I think that's what it is. It's not necessarily about the wins and losses, I think.
By the way, before you guys continue, isn't this the same program that had the guy, was it Grantham from Pittsburgh, that either what did he do? Like he had Arizona State, then leave to Pittsburgh, or agree to Pittsburgh, left for Arizona State or something. Wow, they've had no luck. What do you think, Manny?
Well, one thing I was going to add to all this, and I'm stealing this from Ari Wasserman, who works with me at The Athletic. Ari wrote an article today saying they need to hire former Florida State OC Kenny Dillingham away from Oregon and bring him in because he's a young, energetic guy. But this is a stat that blew me away. Arizona State hasn't signed a blue chip recruit in their own state since 2017. I mean, and Arizona turns out good players every year. I mean, they've got a ton of quarterbacks that come out of that state year to year to year. Isn't Gronkowski, right? I know he went there, but I mean, isn't he one of those Arizona boys? I mean, there's so many good players that come out of that state every year, and it's sort of surprising. And to me, I think that's the number one issue. You talk about what is their identity. Their identity is right now they can't even get anybody in their own home state to stay home, and that's a problem when you're trying to build a foundation, when you're trying to build a fan base to come watch games and get excited about your program. So I think number one, whatever coach they hire has to come in and fix that first.
Did Gronk really go to ASU to play football or to party? Like, come on, let's go. Come on.
Tempe's a great town. Yeah, I've been there for Fiesta Bowls and so forth, and It's a lot of fun there. I think Rush Street, right, is downtown and so forth. But interesting, Ira, another Arizona State transfer, Ricky Pearsall, is doing good things here in Miami as well. He's another guy that kind of bailed on the program. And Herm, you play to win the game, right? Back in the Jetscape days, he played to win the game, but apparently didn't have good oversight over his assistant coaches who were breaking rules. And that's where you are right now. One name that I've heard, is Dan Mullen there. Which would be interesting. Maybe he can resurrect his career there. And of course, they're aiming big. They're also mentioning Urban Meyer, Bob Stoops, but that could be a good landing spot for Dan Mullen. A guy that certainly has a high-powered offensive background and so forth. Could do something with the athletes in that state.
And I think the reason, real quick, just the reason when they mentioned Kenny Dillingham, I think in the athletic report, is he's got Arizona ties. He's from Arizona. And I think that's the issue with getting those blue chip prospects is somebody with some West Coast ties. And some people have thrown out Mike Norvell's name even. Again, he coached out there as well. So I think it seems like, whereas obviously Mullen's done a great job at some of his stops, it feels like maybe a West Coast guy might be what they need for recruiting.
And Dillingham, by the way, has the number 2 quarterback in the country committed to him over there at Oregon, and Dante Moore, who I watched at the 7-on-7 this summer in Las Vegas, and I thought he was without question the best quarterback there among a bunch of elites. So that would help the situation quickly if they were to make that move in season and say, hey, at the end of the year, he's going to be the head coach here.
All right. I'm gonna switch up here the topics that we were discussing, and I'm gonna go because you guys kind of talked a little bit about it, and I would imagine that Seminoles and Gators and Canes fans are a little concerned because each one of these programs and their fan bases, they want to get them back to being prominent again, to being up there in the mix constantly. And Florida has had all the resources. Florida State has had all the resources. Miami has never really had all the resources. Now is when they finally are investing in those resources. So you guys could take turns at this. Are we ever going to get to the point where all 3 schools again are in the mix, in that national title, in the top 10, top 15, in that opportunity? Or is it going to be more of a rotation? Do you not see it in college football that maybe it might be too hard to get back to the old days when all 3 were powers year in and year out?
Well, my question to you would be is when is Nick Saban retiring and when is Kirby Smart stepping down, right? I mean, that's the problem. I think.
Hey, and Dabo too, man. He takes kids out of the state.
Yeah. I think that's the issue right now. Is that you've got
so how do you find your Bobby, and how do you find your Steve, and how do you find your Jimmy, and where you got to go find you guys are telling me about great coaches, right? So then does Florida State, and Miami have the great coach that is that straw that stirs the drink?
Let's look at the recruiting classes too. I mean, part of what makes a great coach is a great recruiter. And Clemson with their Waterfalls facility, right, that they have there, and Florida just opened up a beautiful complex, 85 million complex. You wonder if NIL and some of what John Ruiz is doing and some of what Florida is trying to do up here with the Gator Guard, if that will balance that out in recruiting as well. But you look at the 5 stars right now, and they're all going to Alabama and they're all going to Georgia, and they're plucking a lot of these 5 stars in the state's backyard. And Florida, I think within the state, they have to do a better job of that. And they also have to do a better job of identifying the hidden gems. You talk about getting Florida guys. It's not about necessarily getting the Florida guys. It's about getting the right Florida guys. It's about a school like Miami identifying a T.Y. Hilton as a talent and not letting him go to FIU, for example. Something like that, not going strictly by the measurables, but looking at, the heart of a player or how hard he's going to work and how hard he's going to develop.
Yeah. The thing that's a big question, is I think each of these schools has a chance to get back up there individually, but man, getting back to the glory days, I just don't know if you can keep these players in state. And the way, back in the day, the kids grew up in South Florida dreaming of those 3 schools. And if they couldn't get into Miami, they went to Florida State. If they couldn't get into Florida State, they went to Florida. They couldn't get into Florida, they went to, they all had their favorite schools growing up, but they wanted to be one of those schools because that's what mattered. Well, now with TV and those other schools and the college football playoff and all the other stuff and the way that Clemson and Alabama and these other schools are rating the state. And then, NIL is going to help, obviously, with Miami, keep some guys. But look, man, Texas A&M's got NIL money. Southern Cal's got NIL money. All the Texas schools do. So it's going to be a challenge to just keep those kids in state. So I think there's a decent to good chance you'll see one or maybe two of these schools at a time get back up there. But I don't know if we'll see all three like it was in the 80s and 90s.
One thing I'll add to that is I think the number one thing that has to happen is that these teams have to start playing meaningful games again against each other.
Right.
I mean, think about how far Miami, Florida State has fallen, because before FSU went on this terrible run, it was the Al Gold era at Miami when they were terrible. And the Gators too. I mean, the Gators have kind of risen a little bit, right? They get to that 10-11 win mark, but they don't really maintain it. And so to me, we need a few seasons here where Miami and Florida State are playing, nationally televised important games, and the same thing with the Gators and Knowles and whenever Miami and Florida meet.
It's almost like that. One of the, you guys can tell me, but it seems like, when Miami broke through, and most of us are old enough back with Schnellenberger, you kind of went under the radar. But until you start surprising the Alabamas and the Clemsons of the world, then you're not going to convince these kids that it's better to go to your school than it is to go to Clemson, Georgia, and Alabama and Ohio State, because it seems like that's what these kids are looking at. They're going, my best chance to win a national title is with those schools. Unfortunately, Florida State, and Miami are not giving those kids the stage to be there. And Ira, that's why I mentioned, will you see all three, or will it be kind of a rotation type of thing? Yeah. That's kind of what I think it is. There's got to be a coach. One of the three coaches has to kind of break through and have that magical type season that you dominate your conference and you go on to have a run on the national title, because that's the only way you're really going to convince anybody. It's not so much you surprise somebody and you get there and you fall. You literally have to win it. You have to be Miami knocking Nebraska out in 83 in order to kind of say, hey, look at us, we're here.
The other thing, when Jimbo was at Florida State, to the point, Manny was making, like, Jimbo had that great record against Florida and Miami, but they were both down. And so he kind of had the benefit of that. Those teams were not doing real well. And I think, one of the Jimbo's frustrations at FSU was, if Florida and Miami are not in great shape right now, we need to pour all the money in we can, look in a business. His point was, if Target's beating Walmart, they're not going to slow down. They're going to pour it on because they want to distance themselves. And he thought Florida State should be doing that, and they didn't. And I think what you have right now with these three young coaches, Mike Norvell's in his third year, but the other two are in their first years, is right now everybody's trying to figure out who can get to the top first, and then try to push everybody down and get themselves ahead. And that's where, look, I mean, there's been a lot made about Florida's coaching staff and support staff and the money they put into it. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about Miami and what they're doing with resources. Florida State's invested too, maybe not quite to the same level, but way more than they ever have, because everybody feels like they've got to get to the top first. And that's what this race is right now.
Yeah, and
like
you bring up,
it's like the race for space, by the way. Amazon and Virgin and the U.S. and China and so the first rocket, Miami, Florida State, to hit the spot is the one that's going to win, and it's going to hit the lottery.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Urban Meyer, when he had his run from about 2005 to 2008, Florida State and Miami were both down also. So you bring up that good point about just getting all three up there is going to take a lot of work.
It's just a shame that they were college football royalty, and they're not college football royalty anymore. And it's kind of hard to swallow, because it's been so long. At least, as a Miami fan, it's been so long. And then I look at Florida State, and then I look at Florida, and you're talking about, guys, you cover this every day. What is it? Florida, Texas, California, and Georgia, I think, are the top four states for recruiting. So these three teams or programs are in one of the richest states, and they can't find their way back. And by the way, what you were saying, Ira, is so true. If they would have done that, they would have become Clemson, FSU.
The door was open.
Right.
The other thing that, the ACC for a while, Manny mentions wanting those games to be big again. For a while, the ACC had kind of the big con. You'd put Florida State, Miami against each other in week 1, and people would feel like, okay, well, this is Florida State,
right.
Miami again. You didn't realize that neither one of them was any good.
Right.
So and those weeks later, you find out the problem with a year like this year, where Florida State, they're all playing each other late in the year. Florida State's going to play Florida and Miami in November. We're going to know by then. You can't pull the con anymore. These teams may not be as good as we thought they were going to be. Those might need to go back to those week 1 games where you could fool people into thinking these are big games.
Agreed.
All right, now I'm going to put all three of you in a really uncomfortable position right now, since you all write for one fan base each here. Okay, Manny, who's the first to get to a national title? Miami, Florida, or Florida State?
Wow, can I say UCF and get everybody angry at the same time? In all seriousness, I think the Gators have the easiest path in terms of getting into that 12-team playoff, right? You just got to be pretty good in the SEC. You win 10 games, you get there. Can't say that for Miami and Florida State. They probably have to be a 1-loss team, 2-loss team at most to get into the college football playoff once it expands. So I would say the Gators probably would have the best chance. They continue to, get excellent recruits, put out a ton of guys in the NFL. But honestly, I couldn't tell you. I really don't have a gut feeling one way or the other.
No, it's like throwing darts. What do you think, Ira?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard because, so much of it is talent. And so many of these battles haven't been waged yet. And you have these new coaching staffs. But the other part of it is the transfer portal. And this is why, and I'm writing something, probably tonight about the polls, and a little bit of my frustration, and I think a lot of Florida State fans' frustration about them not being ranked when some other schools that were preseason ranked and now have losses are still up there. President Company accepted. But, I think it's that's the transfer portal. It's so hard now to go into a season with any knowledge of what teams are going to be. And so Florida State goes out, their best 2 or 3 receivers are transfers. A couple of their best linemen are transfers. You look at teams across the country, you could, a guy, again, like Van Dyke is a perfect example, or Jordan Travis. Look, man, who knows at the end of this year, Jordan Travis has another year of eligibility. If he really has a great year, I mean, is it possible that somebody else picks him off? So those are the questions I think that make it so hard, because not only is it about recruiting and building, you used to be able to see it coming. Like you could see a class develop and then a class behind them, and you could see it growing. Now, man, I just think it's who the hell knows, because these players are going to come and go, especially, as the NIL money continues to grow.
All right, when we come back, we're going to get a little preview here of all three teams and their matchups coming up this weekend. You're listening, of course, to Ira Schofel from Warchant, Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun, and Manny Navarro from The Athletic. I am Orlando Alzagari. Let's take a break. You're listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
You're listening to the home for hardcore college football coverage. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable with Manny Navarro, Ira Schofel, and Kevin Brockway on the Sports Talk 305 Network. When you move, you need a reliable company led by passionate folks, eager to assist its customers during a transitional process that needs to be smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full-service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com.
If you're a Miami sports fan, then there's only one store to go to, and that's Caneswear at Miami Fanwear in Davie. They're your one-stop shop for all your Inter Miami CF, Canes, Dolphins, Panthers, and Marlins merchandise. They have hats, t-shirts, game day jerseys, and so much more. Located at 2511 South University Drive in Davie, and open 24/7 online at caneswear.com or intermiamiwear.com. Call them at 954-835-5597. Caneswear, the spot where Inter Miami and all Miami sports fans shop. There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
Welcome back to the best coverage of college football around the state on any platform. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sportstalk305 Network.
All right, welcome back. And by the way, Kevin, I'm not going to let you get away with that. So you might have to piss off your fan base too. Which is the team that's closest, you think, to winning a title?
I thought I was going to get off. I would say that Florida, I think we can all agree, has the best facilities at this point, with opening the new Hefner complex. But I kind of like what Miami is doing in recruiting. I think they're being very aggressive, certainly, with NIL. And I'm a big Mario Cristobal guy. I do like him a lot as a person, having known him, from back in my college days. So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say Miami. I think with the ACC, the path of the ACC, I think they've got a pretty good shot within the next 3 to 5 years to really do something special under Mario.
How about Kevin? He didn't short arm the answer, huh? There you go, like a Gator would. All right, nice job. Way to go. All right, let's go. Let's
I'm
start
sure I'll
off.
be excommunicated, within a week, and I'll be the former Gator beat writer.
Yeah, the Gator Nation is not going to be happy with that prediction. But that's good. First week, we get to start pissing people off. That's exactly what we want on the platform. Yes, let's do that. All right, Middle Tennessee and Miami. Miami now drops to number 25 in the country, 3:30 on Saturday. Talk to us a little bit about not just this shouldn't be much of a challenge, but any injuries and concerns going into this game, Manny.
Well, I mean, obviously the news after the Texas A&M loss was the fact that Restrepo was going to be out 6 weeks. And then, he was obviously Tyler Van Dyke's favorite target, his roommate, his best friend. That's going to hurt Miami for a while. And then they lost Jacoby George to a broken thumb. And Jacoby was back from suspension. This game, had 3 catches for 41 yards, almost scored. I think they didn't call the tripping penalty there on the Texas A&M DB who was on his back, but they probably should have, because if he doesn't stick his leg out, George probably scores a touchdown there. So I think, going into this game for Miami, it's just about getting that part of the offense right. That's all you're looking for here against Middle Tennessee State. Showing that Tyler and his receivers can be on the same page, that they can move the football, and that they can score in the red zone. If they do that in this game, I think people will start to feel a little bit better. I'll tell you this, I think most people told you before the season started that they'd go to Texas A&M, outgain them by over 100 yards, pick up 27 first downs, and dominate between the 20s. They'd say, well, man, that's a great showing against the preseason ranked number 6 team. The fact that they lost Appalachian State is what obviously changed all that. But I think for the most part, Miami's kind of still on schedule with where they should be in their development. Yes, they didn't win at Texas A&M, but I still think that all things considered, we knew receiver would be a problem. I still think they're trending in the right way under Mario.
Can they finish? Because you talk about moving between the 20s and settling for field goals, but you got to start putting 7 on the board too. They've got to figure out a way to also finish these drives, because once you get to ACC play, that's the reason why I asked the cupcake question earlier, because it's just now when the competition is ratcheted up, now all of a sudden, man, you didn't sharpen your skills against the easier opponents, and then when you had a tough opponent, you also couldn't finish. So for me, that has to be a major concern, that you cannot finish drives, and in the spirit of Tony Sperano, you're keeping the field goals alive.
Yeah, they've got to finish this week, and I think you'll start to see maybe some bubble screens near the goal line. You didn't really see that this past week. You didn't see anything to just get the ball on the outside and let a guy make somebody miss. I think you might start to see them go to the tight ends more in the red zone. We didn't see any passes to Will Mallory in the end zone. I think those kind of things are sort of the focus this week, to get the ball into the sure hands and let your playmakers try to get in the end zone.
Well, the fan would ask you, is there anybody that they can go out there and is there a name that we don't know, Manny, under the radar that can save this team? I mean, I've told you my idea. I say John Ruiz should just hire a couple of ninjas and just go kidnap Arante Gadsden's kid.
Right. Get him home.
Yeah, dude, the poor kid's going to freeze his ass in Syracuse. Bring him on down to South Florida. The old man's hanging out here in South Florida. Come on, you're doing a favor. You're bringing a family together. I mean, there's a lot of positives to all of this. So, if kidnapping is not in the future, what is?
Yeah, I don't know. I think moving Malik Curtis from cornerback to a receiver might be one option. There's really just not a lot there. Throwing Jaleel Skinner out at wide receiver, he was a big, tall tight end, but he's thin still. He's got some speed to him. There's really no alternatives. The guys that are here have to step up. Romello Brinson, Brashard Smith, those are the guys that have to step up their game here. They're going into, this is their second year. This is the time when guys have to take that step forward.
You just, I know I'm also going to date myself here, but it just reminds me of the scene of History of the World Part 1. I've got nothing for sale. Nothing. I've got nothing for sale. I mean, that kind of hurts there. All right, 3:30, Middle Tennessee taking on number 25, Miami. All right, Ira, warchant.com for you FSU fans out there. 1-2 Boston College taking on 3-0 Florida State. Talk to us about this matchup. Where should Florida State be concerned?
Well, as Manny brought up earlier, all the injuries. This is a game, look, it's been a long time. Florida State's favored by 16 and a half points. It's been a long time since FSU's been favored in an ACC game against anybody by anything like that. So that shows that people have taken notice, at least in Vegas, that this team is an improved football team. And if it was the team that played against LSU and the team that played against Louisville, I think it would not be a contest. The problem is it probably won't be. We don't know about Jordan Travis. We don't know about Jared Verse, who's their best pass rusher. Fabian Lovett, their best defensive tackle, didn't even play in that game against Louisville. He was actually hurt against LSU. The offensive tackle, Robert Scott, went down during the game. Malcolm Ray, an defensive tackle from Miami.
I've got nothing. I've got nothing for
all those guys went down, and we don't know who all is going to be there. Having said that, Boston College is not very good. They lost at home they lost to Rutgers. They lost to Virginia Tech, who just lost to Old Dominion, and they weren't even really competitive in that game. They did get the big win over Maine, as you said. They knocked down the Bears. What Boston College does have, though, is Phil Jerkovich, the quarterback, and Zay Flowers, the receiver, are big time. And so the key for Florida State is to not let them – you can't let Zay Flowers beat you. You can't give up 3 or 4 touchdown passes to the best player on the field. Make all these other guys – find a way to beat you with a really beat up and depleted offensive line, then I think Florida State wins the game easily. The only way I think BC wins it is if, they just, you have brain farts or something in the secondary and you let their one really elite player beat you.
And Manny talks about how Mario wants to play kind of a conservative type of game. Is that the kind of approach they're going to have to take in this one?
They probably will to some degree, yeah, because especially if Jordan Travis doesn't play. Yeah, if Jordan doesn't play, so if you go to Tate Rodemaker, who did come in and was respectable in the second half, completed 6 of 10 passes, made a couple of big passes in that game, but you're not going to want him to throw the ball 30 or 35 times. They do have a good running game. They've got 3 running backs that they feel really confident in. The offensive line's pretty physical. It may be a little depleted right now, but it's a pretty physical offensive line. So, yeah, I think you're going to see Florida State try to control the ball, maybe hit some big plays with Johnny Wilson when they can. But, yeah, I think it'll be a little bit more conservative than what they would have done otherwise.
And I know that, they've had their close contests and all that, but at 3-0, you still got to feel kind of, you got to feel good right now, right? So it's got to be a team that throughout the adversity, they're still finding ways to win. Confidence has got to be pretty decent on the team right now.
100%. And again, compared to a year ago or 2 years ago, and it was funny, I was talking to, Devin Travis, Jordan Travis's older brother, Devin Travis played baseball at FSU and he played for the Blue Jays. And they're a South Florida family from West Palm. And Devin said when he would go visit the team the night before games the last couple of years, you could just sense, especially before they played a good team, almost dread among the team. The players, they were dreading the game because they knew that they couldn't play with some of these teams. And now he said, before the LSU game, there's a confidence there. There's just a belief that they can play now with some of the better teams. And then, as you said, winning those games should fortify that. So that I think is going to carry them. If they win, if they beat Boston College as they should, if they can beat Wake Forest the next week, you've got two huge games against NC State and Clemson. And if they get to 5-0, you'd at least go into those games with some confidence and, let the chips fall where they're going to fall.
8:00 Saturday, ACC Network, Boston College and Florida State. All right, Kevin, you're going to be covering game day is going to be there in Knoxville. That's pretty cool. Number 20, Florida against number 11, Tennessee. So first of all, before I get into you give us the actual football nuggets, what is more annoying? The Florida
Rocky
State
Top
or Rocky Top? See, you've experienced both, right? So you're going to be driven crazy by Rocky Top for 87 hours, but you've been to FSU also, and so I'm just wondering, which one do you reach for the aspirin first?
They play Rocky Top more frequently, so I'll say Rocky Top. They just play that all the time, not every 20 seconds. Yeah, my ears are going to be ringing by the end of the night, Big O. I mean, it's going to be miserable, but it is a great atmosphere up there. 100,000 at Neyland Stadium. Knoxville's a good town. Fun town. Yeah,
it's sold out. It's sold out. How about that?
Yep.
There you go.
Oh yeah. No, it's going to be along Tennessee River. Huge game. First road game of the season. First road start for Anthony Richardson. He played in the Florida Georgia game last year. It was kind of half and half. So I think it's going to be a really difficult challenge, obviously, for Florida. I mean, in order for them to win, they're really going to have to kind of control the tempo, control the top. Tennessee under Josh Heupel, former UCF coach, averaging 52 a game. They get plays off in about 18 to 20 seconds, really high-powered, high-tempoed offense. And Florida, likely without Ventrell Miller, starting linebacker, and Michael Tarquin, their offensive lineman, starting right tackle, also is questionable for this game. So I think it's going to be a really tall task. And, spread is 10, and I see Florida, probably losing that game in that neighborhood, like, say, maybe a 35-24 kind of game.
Are they going to corral Richardson and kind of make him a little bit more of a conservative, maybe use more of his athleticism running and then kind of, I don't know, shave half the field at times, have him roll out and just have a high-low type of, kind of simplify things for him to kind of get him comfortable and confident in what he can do?
Yeah, and I thought they had that great game plan in week 1 against Utah when they did that, and they've shied away from that. And I think some of that is what defenses are taking away. But we did a podcast earlier with the beat writer from Knoxville, the New Sentinel, and he said that Tennessee's had some issues with mobile quarterbacks. So maybe this is a game where Anthony Richardson gets going again with his legs a little bit, and if they can just really be creative with them and get him going in that regard. The other issue, too, is that Jack Miller, the backup, is still out with the broken thumb. So they're being careful in that regard as well, in terms of, realizing, because their backup right now is Jalen Kitna, John Kitna's son from the NFL days of the Detroit Lions. He hasn't taken a college snap yet. So they're being careful, I think, with Anthony in that regard, too. And he did have some injury issues last year.
It's amazing. Tennessee is another one of those programs trying to find its magic. Ever since they fired Philip Fulmer, they were never the same again. Even when they brought him back to try to resurrect it, nothing. Let's see if Heupel has the magic touch, man. We'll find out.
Florida's won 16 of the last 17 in the meetings, Big O, but Heupel and Tennessee have already picked up a big road win at Pittsburgh, defending ACC champions. So
we'll see.
What's interesting. It just came to my mind is Ken was talking, like, we always coaches worry about the backup quarterbacks, and I get it. It makes sense, and fans do also. But Tyler Van Dyke isn't who he is if somebody didn't get hurt. Kyle Trask isn't who he is if somebody didn't get hurt. So sometimes, man, you don't know what you have sometimes on the bench until those guys get in games. So, I wouldn't be so cautious that it cost you a game. Because you got other guys on scholarship, they may surprise you.
Sometimes, exactly. They end up surprising and they become the story of it all. All right. Well, guess what? The first edition of the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable is in. On behalf of Sean Stanley, who masters this program and this entire platform, we thank, of course, Ira Schofel, Kevin Brockway, and Manny Navarro. I am Orlando Alzigari. Stay tuned. Mike McCoy's coming up. The Miami Hurricanes Watch, 1 hour of hardcore Hurricanes talk. We will be back next week at the same time. And, of course, we'll catch you tomorrow morning again here on the platform starting off at 8:45 Eastern. Y'all be good. Be safe out there. We'll catch you next week.
You've been listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sportstalk305 Network. This program is mastered by Sean Stanley and Chad Show. Make sure to subscribe to the Big O Radio Show on all platforms. Thank you for supporting us.